The judge pointed at me and said, "You are not fit to raise a child," right in front of my daughter. But he did not know the man he just humiliated had a Medal of Honor buried in a shoebox. And the moment I placed it on the courtroom table, the entire room went silent. "You are not fit to be a parent," the judge shouted across the courtroom, his gavel slamming down like a bullet to my chest. "Get out of my courtroom." I stood there frozen, clutching the worn-out folder that held every photo, every school report, every scrap of paper I would collected to prove that I was a good father. But none of it seemed to matter. Not in that moment. Not in front of him. Across the courtroom, my little girl, Amira, sat on the hard wooden bench, legs swinging off the edge, too short to reach the floor. She looked at me with eyes the color of dusk deep, still, and trembling with questions she was too afraid to ask. She was just 8 years old, but she understood. She could feel the weight of the word unfit, even if she could not spell it. The bailiff moved toward me. I did not fight. I did not raise my voice. I would have been trained not to. I simply turned to the judge and whispered, "Sir, with all due respect, I would die for that child." He did not look up. The courtroom emptied around me, like someone had pulled the plug on hope. The cold marble floor beneath my boots seemed harder than usual, like the ground itself was trying to remind me. This world was not built for men like me to win in rooms like this. My name is Jeremiah Cole. I am a mechanic, a war veteran, a single black father living in the worn-down end of Montgomery, Alabama. My skin is dark like the engine oil I scrub from my hands every night before dinner. My right leg is titanium. My back is bent from carrying crates, burdens. And now, a custody battle I never asked for. I am not rich. I do not speak with the polish of lawyers or wear suits that smell like old money and dry clean pride. I do not own a home with a yard or a golden retriever named Winston. I own a toolbox, a 10-year-old pickup, and the fiercest love for a little girl who still believes bedtime stories can save the world. But today, none of that mattered, because in the eyes of Judge George Bradley White, 63, starched collar, silver gavel, a man born into law like some are born into royalty, I was nothing more than a statistical cautionary tale. Black, poor, single, broken, unfit. The word echoed in my chest long after I stepped out into the courthouse parking lot. It was not the first time I would been called that, not by them, but it was the first time someone said it with the legal power to rip Amira out of my arms. She came running toward me before the security guard could stop her. "Daddy," she cried, throwing her arms around my waist. I knelt down slowly, my prosthetic leg clicking against the asphalt, and pulled her in. She smelled like bubble gum and crayons and a life I fought so hard to give her. "I am sorry, baby," I whispered. I did not say the right words in there. She shook her head, small fists gripping my jacket like she could hold the world together with sheer love. "You said the truth, Daddy." That is always the right word. God. How do you protect someone that cure in a world this cruel? I walked her to the truck, buckled her in. My hands trembled, not from rage, not from fear, but from the helplessness of knowing that I had done everything right. And it still was not enough, because the court did not care that I cooked every meal with her favorite seasoning, that I knew how to braid her hair on picture day, that I stayed up past midnight helping her with science fair projects I did not understand, pretended to. They did not care about the nights. I held her through night terrors, whispering lullabies until she believed monsters were make-believe again. No. They cared that I made $36,000 a year, that our home had one bedroom, that her birth mother had died of an overdose, leaving no pristine family tree to present to the court, that the foster mother now vying for her custody wore pearls to court and spoke in passive-aggressive smiles. I was not what society imagined a good father looked like, but if love could be measured in scraped knuckles. Sleepless nights, and every ounce of pride swallowed to give your child a fighting chance. Then I would be been crowned the finest father in America. Instead, I drove home in silence, Amira asleep beside me, a small hand resting on my arm, as though trying to keep me from falling apart. That night, I sat alone in the garage, surrounded by grease, tools, and ghosts of wars that never really ended. I picked up the old cigar box hidden behind the spare tires. Inside, photos from my service me and Louis laughing in the desert, letters from my captain, and beneath it all, a medal wrapped in cloth, one I never told anyone about, not even Amira. I stared at the Medal of Honor in my palm. It gleamed like a broken promise. Maybe it was time the judge saw this. Not because I needed his approval, but because my daughter deserved a courtroom that knew exactly who her father really was. I looked out the garage window, where Amira's drawing still hung a crayon sketch of me in my mechanic jumpsuit, fixing a spaceship with her standing on my shoulders, pointing to the stars. Maybe tomorrow I would stop being quiet. Because today they called me unfit. But tomorrow they would know who I truly was. And I would make damn sure they never forgot it. They do not see us. Not really. When I walk into a courtroom, into a bank, into a school meeting, I am not Jeremiah Cole. I am just a silhouette they have already drawn in their minds. Angry, intimidating, ill-equipped, unworthy. But truth is, I have always been the quiet one. I was born in the back roads of Mississippi. My mama cleaned houses for folks who never bothered to learn her name. My father, well, I never met him. Mama said he served in Vietnam and never came back. Whether that meant war or whiskey, she never clarified. I grew up in a shotgun house that shook when trains passed by. We did not have much, but she made it feel like everything. I remember her hands strong, always moving, always giving. I joined the Marines when I was 18, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I needed a way out, a way forward. They trained me how to fire, how to disarm, how to run straight into hell when others ran out. But what they could not train was how to come back from it. I left part of me in Fallujah, both in memory and in flesh. My right leg is a prosthetic, titanium and carbon fiber. But it is the nightmares that ache more than the bone ever did. I was discharged with honors, a handful of ribbons, and a letter that said, "Thank you for your service." But no letter tells you how to raise a child on your own. After I came back, I met Maria. She was sunshine with curls, the kind of woman who called you sugar even when she was mad. She worked at a diner off Highway 82. I was a regular before I knew her name. We were not supposed to fall in love, but we did. Fast, fierce, like folks who know time is not promised. She got pregnant 3 months in. We married at the courthouse, just us and the judge and a witness who did not even smile. But I did not need a ceremony. I just needed her. Amira came into the world screaming like a fighter, 6 pounds of possibility. The nurse said she had her mother's eyes. I said she had my fire. But Maria did not stay long. Postpartum depression snuck in like a shadow, silent and suffocating. She started using pills just to feel okay, and then more pills to feel anything. I tried everything: counseling, clinics, even begging. But one night, I came home to find Amira asleep in her crib and Maria gone cold on the bathroom floor. I buried her with my own hands. After that, I did not cry for a year. I did not have time to. Amira needed bottles, diapers, lullabies. So I learned how to braid hair from YouTube. I learned to pack lunches with sticky notes that said, "Daddy loves you." I learned how to keep my heart from shattering every time she asked, "When will Mommy come back?" I never told her the truth. Not fully. Just that Mommy loved her more than anything. And that sometimes love gets sick. I picked up a job at a local garage. It was not much, $15 an hour. Busted air conditioning, oil-stained overalls. But it was steady and honest. The guys there called me Doc because of how precise I was with engines. Said I could hear a misfire the way a doctor hears a murmur. "Doc, you are wasting your talent on this dump," they would say. But I was not fixing engines for pride. I was fixing them so Amira could have school shoes that fit, lunch boxes with cartoon characters, and birthday cakes with her name spelled right. Every Friday, I would pick her up from school. She would come running with a paper in her hand, math tests with gold stars, drawings of unicorns, or sometimes just notes that said, "I missed you today, Daddy." She never noticed the limp in my leg, or the ache in my back, or the tremor in my hands when rent was due and the hours got cut. To her, I was enough. But to the state, to Judge Bradley, I was just a mechanic with no degree. No wife, no white picket fence. It started with a knock at the door. A caseworker said someone filed a complaint that Amira was showing up to school unusually quiet, that she wore the same clothes 2 days in a row, that she told a teacher her dad cried sometimes in the garage. That was enough for them to open a file, enough for them to visit, to observe, to judge. They came once. Then again, asked questions with clipboards instead of compassion. "Does your daughter have her own room?" "No, sir. We share the 1-bedroom apartment." "Do you ever raise your voice?" "I mean, I am a dad." "Do you suffer from peased?" "Yes, but I manage it. I attend group therapy twice a week." That answer was used against me. And now, that woman in the courtroom, the foster mom, was saying all the right things. Church on Sundays, ballet classes, a stable, 2-parent household. She did not know Amira's favorite bedtime song, or the name of the stuffed giraffe she could not sleep without. But she had money, connections, and a last name that sat comfortably on donation plaques. The judge did not even ask Amira who she wanted to stay with. He just looked at me and said, "Ma, Cole, love is not enough." And maybe that is true. Maybe love does not pay for private school or therapy or vacations to the Grand Canyon. But love is why I get up at 4, to make pancakes shaped like hearts. Love is why I learned to dance at her school's daddy-daughter night, despite my legs screaming in protest. Love is why I have never once missed a parent-teacher meeting, even if I showed up covered in grease. I do not have much, but what I have, I pour into her. That night, after court, I tucked her in, her small fingers wrapped around mine. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes barely open. "If we lose, can I still call you Daddy?" I did not answer. I could not. But inside, something cracked, not in defeat. Indecision. I am just a mechanic. But tomorrow, I will be more. Tomorrow, I fight back, not with anger, with truth. Because somewhere deep in a box buried under old memories lies something I swore I would never use. But now, it may be the only thing that saves us. His name was George Whitmore Bradley, but everyone in Montgomery just called him the Hammer. Not because he was tough on crime, though he was. Not because he ran a strict courtroom, though he did. It was because, once he made a decision, it came down like a gavel. Final, loud, and shattering. I would never met a man so terrifying in a three-piece suit. He sat high above the courtroom, cloaked not in black robes, but in indifference. His eyes were sharp, the kind that did not blink often, like he could strip you down with a glance. He had silver hair, combed so perfectly it looked lacquered, and skin like polished ivory smooth. Untouchable. His voice was calm, deliberate, a calm that did not comfort, a calm that warned. "Don T, step out of line." They said he was fair. They also said he had not ruled in favor of a single low-income parent in 5 years. I do not know if that is true, but sitting there, across from his bench, watching him glare down at me like I was some rusted tool that did not belong in his pristine toolbox, I believed it. Cole," he said during our last session, peering over thin glasses, "it is the opinion of this court that while your love for your daughter is evident, love alone is not a sufficient metric for guardianship." Translation: you are black, you are broke, you lost before you walked in here. The woman sitting across the aisle from me, Janet Reeve, fit every mold they trusted. 42. Blonde. Pearls that rested perfectly at the base of her neck. Like they knew their role. She wore lavender suits, always carried a leather-bound folder, and smiled like a saint. She had no biological children, but she fostered 3 over the past decade. All white. All adopted, all well-dressed in photos she showed the judge during recess. She was not a Mira's blood. She would never changed her diapers, never kissed her fevered forehead never rocked her through nightmares about losing her mother. But she told the court she could give Amira a future. Judge Bradley leaned forward in that moment and said, "The court finds Reeve's home to be a more stable environment conducive to emotional and educational growth." I wanted to scream, but I did not in front of Amira. Instead, I clutched the edge of the table and asked calmly, "Did anyone ask my daughter where she wants to live?" Bradley's eyes flickered just for a second. "The child's opinion has been considered." Considered? When? By whom? I wanted to challenge that but my court-appointed lawyer, God bless him, was too new. Too nervous, and too outmatched by Janet's top-dollar legal team to object. So I stayed silent. But inside, I was boiling. Not because he doubted me. I am used to being doubted. Not because he preferred a polished home over my one-bedroom apartment. I understand comfort. No. What shattered me was how easily he dismissed me, as if I were a case file. A number. A stereotype. Judge Bradley had built his career on structure, on status, on the belief that order came from authority, and authority came from pedigree. He did not see me. He saw a problem, one he could fix with a signature. But that is where he made his mistake, because I was not the same man who came home broken from war. I was not the young boy who let teachers mispronounce his name just to get through the day. I was not the ghost Maria once begged to show emotion. I was a father, and no system, no judge, no courtroom bench would take that from me without a fight. After the session, I walked Amira out to the parking lot. She held my hand tighter than usual. "Is that the man who wants to take me away?" she asked, looking back toward the courthouse. "No," I said softly. "That is just the man who thinks he can." She nodded like she understood. But what does a child really understand of power? Of men who sit above you not because they are better, because someone handed them the ladder and told them they were born to climb. That night, I did something I had not done in years. I called Luis Mendez. He picked up on the third ring. "Doc." "Yeah," I said, voice cracking. "I think it is time." Silence. Then, a slow, low exhale. "I still got it." He said, "The box, the citations, the witness letter from the captain. You want me to bring them?" "Yeah." I whispered, "Judge Bradley needs to meet all of me." And so began the preparation, not for a fight, but for a revelation, because Bradley thought he was dealing with a mechanic. What he did not know, what none of them knew, was that beneath the grease, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the quiet, was a warrior. And I was done letting men like him define my worth. They said I was angry. I whispered to myself, gripping the folded report in my hand so tightly the paper crinkled beneath my fingers. The ink bled where my sweat soaked through. They said I was angry. I was standing in the hallway outside the courtroom, heart pounding so loud it felt like my ribs were a drum. The court-appointed psychologist's report had just been submitted into evidence. It was 2 pages long. 2 pages. To summarize the entirety of my fatherhood, my soul, my battles, and my love for Amira. And on the final line, in Clean Times' New Roman font, it read, "Ma. Cole exhibits signs of emotional repression, unresolved combat trauma, and concerning agitation during interviews. These suggest he may have difficulty managing parental stress. Recommend reevaluation of custody." Translation: he is angry. He is a threat. He is not safe. I laughed, not out loud, not the kind of laugh anyone would hear, but the kind that clawed its way through your chest when you realized the world did not care who you were, only what box they could trap you in. Angry. Was I angry when I watched my wife slip away one pill at a time, knowing no insurance plan would cover the rehab she needed? Was I angry when I worked double shifts with a knee that screamed at me, just to afford a Mirus inhaler after the state cut her benefits? Was I angry when I heard my daughter cry herself to sleep because she missed a mother she barely remembered? Yes, I was angry, but not the kind of angry they thought. Not the kind that hits, or yells, or threatens. I was the kind of angry that rises quietly, the kind that still shows up, that cooks breakfast, that learns multiplication tables, that waits in line at the food pantry with a straight back and pride stuffed deep in his pocket. But Judge Bradley did not care about that kind of anger. Neither did the woman who filed the complaint, Janet Reeve, who claimed she had serious concerns about Amira's emotional well-being. She said my daughter seemed withdrawn, that she appeared to hesitate when asked about home, that she did not smile enough. Of course she did not smile. She was in a strange office, being asked to talk about the only person she trusted. What child smiles under interrogation? Janet's lawyer painted her as a savior. She owned a 5-bedroom home in a gated neighborhood. She volunteered at the Children's Museum. She even had a backyard trampoline, which somehow made her more suitable in the eyes of the state. And me, I had oil under my fingernails, a limp in my step, Pusid written on my file in all caps. They never asked about the bedtime stories I read with voices that made Amira giggle. They never saw the night she had an asthma attack, and I ran barefoot through traffic to the emergency room because the car would not start. They never saw the crayon picture on our fridge with the caption, "My hero is my dad." They just saw angry. That afternoon, after court adjourned, I drove home with Amira. She was quiet again, eyes fixed on the passing buildings outside the window, like she did not want to blink and miss the last of something. "Am I going to live with her?" she finally asked. Her voice was so small, so calm, like she would already decided that the world gets to take what it wants. I pulled over, put the truck in park, turned to her and said, "You live with me, and no one takes you unless they go through me first." She looked up at me and asked, "But what if they think you are too mad?" I did not answer right away, because there was a part of me that wanted to scream, that wanted to storm the courtroom and throw my medal at the judge's feet and demand they see me. But I did not. Instead, I reached into the glove box and pulled out the old photograph. It was bent, the edges worn, a snapshot of me in my Marine uniform, standing with Louis and 2 others, covered in sand, sweat, and the silent trauma of survival. On the back, scrawled in faded pen, Fallujah, 2008 brothers who never broke. "Do I look angry here?" I asked her. She shook her head. "No, you look brave." I nodded. "And that is all I have ever been, baby. Brave for you." She smiled then, just a little. Just enough. That night, I called Louis again, told him I was ready to open the box, ready to bring the past forward. He said, "Are you sure, Doc? You know they will say you are using it to manipulate the court." "I do not care what they say," I replied. "They have already called me everything. Might as well let them see the full picture." We agreed to meet the next day. He said he still had the original witness letter from our unit commander, confirming what I did in Fallujah, how I ran into an ambush to pull out 5 wounded men while taking shrapnel to the leg. The kind of story they write movies about. The kind of story Judge Bradley would never believe unless he saw it with his own eyes. I hung up and went into Amira's room. She was fast asleep, curled around Myrrh. Bananas, her stuffed giraffe. The moonlight fell on her face like a whisper. I stood there, hand on the doorframe, wondering how many more nights I would get like this. How many more songs, stories. Good-night kisses. They said I was angry. They were right. But tomorrow, they would find out what happens when a righteous man gets angry. Not with violence, with truth, with honor, and with everything they tried to bury under paperwork and assumptions. Tomorrow, the Medal of Honor walks into court, and this time, they will be forced to look up at me. I stood in front of the courthouse the next morning, wearing my only decent shirt white, pressed at home with the tip of an iron I borrowed from Louis. My palms were sweating, not from fear, from something worse. The crushing weight of not being believed. You know the feeling, when you speak and everyone hears the words, but not the meaning. When your truth walks into the room with a limp and there's struts in with polished shoes and $1,000 smiles. When people shake their heads before you even open your mouth. That was my life in this custody battle. It did not matter that I had raised Amira from birth, that I made every parent-teacher meeting, that she called out for me when she was scared. In their eyes, I was still just a broken man from a broken system, a mechanic with a military history, and a child he should be never been allowed to raise alone. Luz arrived just before 9. He stepped out of a dusty red SUV, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, leather jacket creased from years of wear. He looked like the past itself had driven back into my life. Under his arm was the box I would buried in the back of the closet, behind toolboxes and unpaid utility bills. The one I did not want Amira to find, because I did not want her to think her father was a war story. Luz handed it to me with both hands. You sure about this? I nodded. He looked me over. You know they're going to say you are using this as pity. I am not looking for pity. I said, I am looking for justice. He smiled. Then you came to the wrong building. He was not wrong, because when we walked inside and handed the documents to the bailiff for review, the clerk gave me a sideways glance and whispered something to another staffer. A security guard stood unusually close, as if suddenly I was dangerous because I dared to show up with evidence that did not fit their narrative. 10 minutes later, we were pulled aside. Cole, the court liaison said. Lips thin, eyes wary. The judge will review your submission, but please understand character references and military history. While admirable, may not significantly influence the court's decision on custodial capability. Luz leaned in. He has a Medal of Honor. That is not a character reference. That is federal recognition for risking his life. The liaison blinked. Still, sir, the court cannot be swayed by emotional appeals. I could be laughed. Not because it was funny, but because they would already been swayed by power, by class, by whatever aroma Janet Reeves' perfume carried that whispered trust me in a language I did not speak. We sat back down in the gallery. Amira's little legs dangled from the front bench beside a court supervisor. She turned and waved at me, eyes hopeful. I gave her a nod. I did not smile. I could not. Inside, I was unraveling. Because Lewis was right. No one believed me. When I told the caseworker I would never raise a hand to Amira, she made a note but would not look me in the eye. When I told the school principal Amira slate homework was because I had the flu and she stayed home to take care of me, she smiled politely but filed a report anyway. When I told the court that I could provide a safe, loving home, they asked if my disability prevented me from chasing a child if she ran into the street, as if love had a sprinting requirement. So I stopped trying to convince them with words. When the judge entered, I stood, not because as I respected him, but because Amira was watching. He called the room to order. Then it began. Janet's lawyer started with another list of concerns. She referenced Amira's emotional withdrawal, my financial limitations, and most of all, my inability to provide a maternal influence. She even handed in a proposal for immediate temporary guardianship transfer, citing Amira's critical developmental stage. Then it was our turn. My lawyer, fresh out of law school, trembling, stood up and cleared his throat. "Your Honor," he began, "we would like to submit additional documentation regarding Mother Cole's character, contributions to the nation, and first-hand testimonial from his commanding officer." Judge Bradley raised a brow. "Military service." "Yes, sir," my lawyer said, "including records of a Medal of Honor awarded to Mr. Cole for." "I am aware of the medal's criteria," Judge Bradley interrupted. He did not ask to see it. He did not lean forward. He just sighed like my life story was a paperwork delay. Louise stood up then. "Your Honor." "With respect, I was there. I saw Jeremiah pull 5 bleeding men out of a kill zone after he had been shot and had already lost part of his leg. I wrote that letter myself. If that does not count as fitness to raise a child, then I do not know what does." Judge Bradley narrowed his eyes. "Mendez, unless you are an expert in child development or custodial law, your testimony carries limited relevance." Lewis clenched his jaw. I reached into the box, pulled out the medal, walked to the front of the courtroom. "I do not expect this to win me custody," I said, "but I want you to look at it." I placed it on the table. Silence. The gold caught the overhead lights. Amira's eyes widened. The courtroom did not clap. No one stood. But something shifted. A crack in their narrative. Judge Bradley looked at it, then at me, then at Amira, and for the first time I saw doubt in his eyes. Not belief. Not yet. But doubt. And sometimes, that is the first miracle you get in a system that was never meant for you to win. There is a quiet kind of war that happens after the courtroom lights dim, after the judge walks out, after the whispers fade. It happens in the kitchens of one-bedroom apartments. At midnight, when the only sound is the hum of a broken fridge and the slow, steady breath of a child asleep in the next room. That night, I sat alone at the edge of my bed, staring at the Medal of Honor, still resting on the counter. I had not put it away. I did not want to. Not because I needed validation from a cold courtroom, but because for the first time in weeks, I saw myself again. Not the angry black father, not the mechanic who limps, but the man who walked into hell and walked back out, carrying more than just survivors. I carried the cost. They say war breaks you, but it did not. It branded me. It hardened me. It taught me to fight smart, quiet, and long. So now, I would fight for Amira the same way. I got up, pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and started documenting everything minute by minute, day by day. Her school routine, her meals, her bedtime stories, her nightmares, her laughter. I began taking photos of our fridge with her artwork, of our tiny kitchen with her scribbled spelling words taped to the walls, of her brushing her teeth, tying her shoes, falling asleep in my arms. I was going to show them what love looks like, not in courtroom language, but in truth. The next day, I drove to the public library and printed out everything: photo captions, receipts from doctor visits, report cards, signed permission slips. I even found her first drawing of our apartment, with stick figures labeled me and Daddy and Myrrh. Bananas the stuffed giraffe. Each page I printed felt like armor. I was not just defending myself anymore. I was documenting a life no one else seemed to believe existed. When I walked into the courthouse 2 days later with a thick binder full of our life, the security guard stopped me. "You need to leave that with the front desk," he said, motioning to the binder. I shook my head. "This is my defense." He stared at me a second too long, then waved me through. Inside the courtroom, Janet's lawyer spoke first again. Polished, unflinching. They were requesting expedited custody transfer, citing Amira's prolonged emotional vulnerability. They even brought in a therapist who claimed she exhibited signs of detachment disorder. They did not say that her supposed detachment was her refusal to call Janet Mom. When it was my turn, my lawyer cleared his throat and slid the binder forward. "Your Honor, my client has provided a comprehensive portfolio of his parenting efforts, including medical, academic, and social records of his daughter's well-being in his care. He also included photographic evidence and character testimony from a licensed child counselor." Judge Bradley looked at the binder. He did not touch it, just leaned back, eyes like steel. Cole," he said finally, "you continue to provide evidence of effort, not necessarily of stability. The concern is not whether you try. It is whether you can sustain." I should have stayed quiet, but I did not. I stood. "Your Honor," I said, voice low but certain. "I may not have a college degree. I may not live in a 5-bedroom house, but stability is not always found in numbers. Sometimes it is found in routine, in commitment, in showing up every day even when no one's watching." Judge Bradley did not stop me, so I kept going. "Amira has never gone a day without breakfast. She has never gone to sleep without hearing me say I love you. She has a bed, books, friends, and dreams. She smiles every morning when I pack her lunch with jokes on sticky notes. That is her stability." Silence. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the letter Amira had written weeks ago, the one she slipped into my coat, folded like a secret. "I do not want to live with the lady," she had written in clumsy cursive. "She smells like lemon spray and her house is too quiet. I want to stay with Daddy. He makes pancakes look like dinosaurs. I love him. Please do not make me go." I read it aloud. And when I finished, my voice cracked, not from nerves, from truth. No one said a word, not the lawyers, not the judge, not even Janet. And then something shifted. Luz, seated behind me, stood up and placed a manila folder on the clerk's table. This is a signed affidavit from Sergeant Charles Key. Bryant, our confirms Jeremiah's acts of heroism, confirms his mental fitness during active duty, confirms his recommendation for civilian leadership. Judge Bradley finally leaned forward. His eyes scanned the folder. Then, for the first time, he looked directly at me, not through me, not over me, at me. "What changed, Cole?" he asked. I paused, then answered, "I stopped apologizing for being poor. That night, I came home and cooked Amira's favorite mac and cheese with hot dogs sliced like octopuses. We danced in the kitchen while it cooked. She did not know yet what had happened in court, but she felt something in the way I smiled, something that said, I may be tired, but I am not broken." It was a Wednesday. Gray sky. No wind. The kind of morning that felt like it was holding its breath. I sat in the Cortho House parking lot in my truck, engine off, hands clenched on the wheel. Amira's backpack sat in the back seat, even though she would not be going to school today. She insisted, said it was her lucky bag, said she needed it to keep us safe. I looked down at my hands. Calloused, bruised, stained from grease I could not scrub out no matter how hard I tried. These were the same hands that once pulled 5 men from a kill zone in Fallujah, the same hands that changed diapers at 3, patched scraped knees, sewed a busted stuffed giraffe back together with fishing line, hands that held her first steps, her first tears, her whole world. And today, those hands would hold our truth. When we walked through the courtroom doors, I was not nervous. I was ready. The room was already half full. Social workers, attorneys, a family services officer, and in the front row, Janet Reeve, sitting tall in her lavender suit, with her lips curled into that calm, pitying smile she always wore like perfume. Amira gripped my pinky as we approached our table. She did not say much, but she looked up at me and whispered, "It is going to be okay." I nodded and kissed her forehead. "Always." The bailiff called, "All rise," and Judge Bradley entered. Same suit, same gavel, same stone face. But today, he looked tired. He adjusted his glasses, opened a file, glanced down, then up, then at me. "This court has convened for final determination regarding custodial placement of minor Amira Cole." He paused. "Before we proceed, does the respondent have any additional remarks?" I stood. I did not look at the lawyers. I did not look at Janet. I looked only at him. "Your Honor," I said, voice steady, "you have heard the lawyers. You have read the reports. You have seen the binders, the photos, the medals, the letters. But today, I am not asking you to see paper. I am asking you to see her." I turned slightly, gesturing to Amira. "She is 8. She lost her mother before she could even remember her laugh. She has had to grow up with a father who limps, who sometimes flinches when the microwave beeps too loud, and who works 3 jobs just to make sure her birthday cake has her name spelled right. But she also has a father who never missed a school play, who learned how to braid hair from YouTube, who reads bedtime stories in funny voices, who fought for this country and now fights for her. I stepped forward. I did not bring the Medal of Honor here to brag. I brought it because everyone sees what I lack. That medal represents what I endured. I risked my life for this country. All I am asking now is that this country give me the right to raise my daughter. Silence. Then my lawyer placed a small speaker on the desk. He pressed play. It was a voice recording. My voice, from the week before, reading to Amira. And then the brave little fox told the sun, I am not afraid of the dark anymore, because my daddy taught me how to carry light. Amira smiled. I turned to sit. But before I could, Amira stood up, tiny, frail looking, but strong. Your Honor, she said, and the entire room turned. I want to stay with my daddy. Please. It was quiet. Too quiet. Judge Bradley looked at her, then at me. Then he did something I never expected. He took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and for the first time, in all the cold days of court hearings and arguments and legal jargon, I saw the man, not the robe, not the gavel, but the man. He cleared his throat. This court recognizes the exceptional commitment, courage, and love demonstrated by Ware, Cole. He looked at Janet. While the petitioner has provided a stable home, it is the opinion of this court that stability is not defined solely by material wealth. It is defined by consistency, devotion, and truth. He picked up the pen and signed. Full custody granted to Jeremiah Cole. The gavel dropped, but to me it felt like freedom. Amira squealed, ran into my arms. I held her like I did the day she was born. Tight, unshaken, home. Behind us, Janet stood quietly. No words, no protests, just silence. Outside, Luce was waiting. He clapped me on the back. You did it, Doc. No. I said, eyes on Amira. We did, because it was not just a battle for custody. It was a battle for dignity, and for once, in a world that constantly said I was not enough, I was. There was no applause, no parade, no camera flashes or press conferences, just the click of a courtroom door shutting behind us, and the soft crunch of gravel under our shoes as we stepped into the parking lot. And yet, in that quiet, I felt more victorious than I ever had on any battlefield. I held Amira's hand in one, and in the other the small box that carried a decade of dust, memory, and meaning. My Medal of Honor had not spoken a word in court. It had not glowed or thundered or lit the room with righteousness. It had simply sat there on the table silent. Undeniable. It did not win me the case, but it broke the spell. It forced them to look again, because truth does not always roar. Sometimes, it just sits in the light and makes silence feel loud. Luce leaned against his SUV, arms crossed, eyes misty though he would never admit it. Thought he would never say the damn words. He muttered. I smiled. Neither did I. Amira was skipping now, her backpack bouncing with each step. Bananas poking out the top, like he would witnessed the whole trial himself. Daddy, she said. Looking up. Yeah, baby. What is the medal for again? I stopped walking, looked down at her, and crouched, placing the small box in her hands. It is for being brave, I said. For doing something no one thought you could do. For running into danger. To save the people you love. She turned it over. Carefully, like it was made of glass. But you do not wear it. I shook my head. No. Sweet girl. Some things are not meant to be worn. They are meant to remind you who you are. She nodded slowly, then hugged it to her chest. We drove home with the windows cracked. The wind was warm, gentle. Amira fell asleep halfway, her tiny hand still clutching the metal box. I turned the radio low, an old soul track humming through static. At a red light, I glanced at the mirror and saw myself, not a man with tired eyes and scars, not a broken soldier or a poor mechanic, but a father. And finally, only that, when we got home, I did not go straight to bed. I went into the garage and cleared a space on the top shelf. I placed the medal up there, next to the photo of Mariah. She was smiling in the picture, holding a newborn Amira wrapped in pink. Wish you could see her now. I whispered, she is a fighter, just like you. The next few days passed like sunlight through new windows. No more court, no more lawyers, just cereal bowls in the sink and bedtime dances in the hallway. Amira began sleeping better, laughing louder, drawing again. One evening, I found a sketch taped to the fridge. It was me, but not in a mechanic's jumpsuit, not in uniform. Just me in a flannel shirt, holding Amira's hand as we stood in front of a house with flowers in the yard. The caption said, "Me and Daddy. Forever." I cried. Silently, because strength does not mean holding it all in. It means knowing when to let go. Later that week, Amira's teacher called, said she stood up during show and tell, placed the medal on her desk, and told the class, "This belongs to my daddy, because he is a real-life hero. But you do not have to be in the army to be brave. You just have to love someone more than yourself." And that was it. That was the moment I realized something bigger than winning. Something more important than proving the court wrong. She believed in me, and in a world that saw me through the lens of paperwork and prejudice, her faith in me was the loudest justice of all. Because the medal shined. Yes, but so did she. And now, so did we. Justice does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, it comes in soft echoes, in the way a child laughs without fear, in how a man stands tall or not, because the weight is gone, but because he knows he is worthy of carrying it. The days after the ruling blurred into a new kind of rhythm. Not survival, not reaction, but living. I went back to work at the garage, grease under my nails, sweat down my back, the same busted radio blaring Marvin Gaye through static. But something had changed. The guys nodded with respect they used to reserve for men who fought fires or buried parents. Word had gotten around. "Hey, Doc," one of them said as I wiped oil off my hands. "That true. You went toe-to-toe with Judge Bradley and won." I smiled, half shrugging. Didn't he fight him? Just told the truth louder than his gavel. Lewis stopped by more often. Brought coffee. Sat around like an old watchdog who'd finally seen the pup he raised become something stronger than either of us imagined. One morning, he handed me a small wooden plaque. Had it made at the VF. He said, it read, "Jeremiah Cole, father. Fighter. Forever." I choked on my breath for a second, then gave him a hug I would never given another man. Meanwhile, Amira returned to school like she would never left backpacks. Library books. Scuffed sneakers. But she walked different. Lighter. Confident. At recess, she no longer sat alone. She spoke at assembly about never giving up on your family. And her teacher told me, with tears in her eyes, that my daughter made the other students cry during reading circle. That is justice. One afternoon, we were invited to a local veterans event. I did not want to go. Didn't he want applause or podiums or strangers shaking my hand like they knew the cost? But Amira wanted to, so I wore my old uniform. It still fit mostly. I ironed the creases until they were sharp enough to cut shame in half. When we entered the hall, everything slowed. Heads turned, men in hats stood. A woman near the front whispered, "That is the guy from the custody case." The mayor was there. So was the press. I did not speak. Didn't he need to? Because Amira did. She walked up on stage. Ponytail swaying, pink dress a size too big. Medal of Honor swinging from a ribbon around her neck. "This is my daddy's medal," she said, clear and proud. "He got it for being brave in war. But he should get another one, because he was even braver in court, and because he is my hero." Every day, no one moved, no one breathed. And then, thunder, applause like a wave breaking a dam. I stood there, knees weak, eyes burning, heart full. That night, back at home, I tucked her in. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you happy now?" I paused, then smiled. I am free now. And it was true. Not from bills or burdens or the long shadow of a system that nearly swallowed us whole, but free from doubt, from shame, from the weight of being unseen. The next morning, I woke up and made pancakes shaped like hearts, just like always. Because justice is not a single moment. It is the right to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep loving, loudly and without apology. The sun poured through our kitchen window like it finally believed we deserved the light. It was Sunday, Amira's favorite day, not because of cartoons or waffles, but because it was our day. No court. No appointments. No stress. Just us. And for the first time in what felt like years, I did not feel like a man preparing for battle. I felt like a father being a father, I stood at the stove flipping pancakes while she danced barefoot across the floor, dragging mare, bananas by one ear, humming off key to whatever tune was in her heart. Her laughter filled the air like a hymn, the kind of sound that heals things you did not know were still broken. "Make mine like a dinosaur," she yelled. I grinned. "You got it, boss." In the corner of the kitchen was a new addition, a small glass case I built by hand. Inside it, resting neatly against velvet lining, was the Medal of Honor, no longer hidden in a box, no longer buried in a closet. Below it, on a brass plate, I engraved the words, "Love is courage. Courage is enough." Because that is what the world forgets. It is easy to praise soldiers on battlefields, but they never see the battles we fight in grocery lines, in courtrooms, in empty bedrooms where children cry for parents who are still alive but beaten down by the system. I fought a war. Then I came home and fought again. And this time, I won, but not just for me. For every father who wakes up before dawn to pack lunches. For every man who learns how to braid hair with thick, clumsy fingers. For every dad who carries guilt like shrapnel and still shows up every single day. Justice was not just the custody ruling. Justice was Amira running into my arms after school, her backpack heavier than she is, yelling, "Guess what I did today?" Justice was her falling asleep mid-sentence on my chest, trusting the rhythm of my heart more than any lullaby. Justice was me standing in line at the Demev, holding her birth certificate, checking the box that said fathered sole guardian. It did not erase the pain. It did not give me back the time lost in waiting rooms, hearings, and whispered doubts. But it gave us something more powerful: dignity. One afternoon, I started a free repair clinic out of my garage. Called it the Father Fix. I offered tune-ups and oil changes for single dads, veterans, anyone who felt like the world stopped hearing them after they stopped saluting. Luz helped me hang the sign. Amira painted a mural on the side wall, stick figures with superhero capes, and the words, "My daddy fixes everything." Sometimes we get visitors, strangers who heard our story on the news, fathers who cry when I shake their hand. They do not need advice, just to know they are not alone. And so, I tell them what I now know with every cell in my body. You do not need to be perfect to be enough. You do not need degrees or bank accounts or matching holiday pajamas. You just need love. Relentless. Unshakable. Inconvenient. Show up anyway love. The kind that stands in courtrooms without fear. The kind that sleeps on couches when beds are scarce. The kind that does not quit. And if that is you, if you are fighting alone, know this: you are seen. You are worthy. And you are not broken. You are just carrying more than most people ever will. As for me, I am still just a mechanic. Still got bills. Still got busted knuckles. Still trying to figure out how to French braid. But every night, I get to kiss my daughter goodnight. And every morning, I get to hear her whisper, "You are my hero, Daddy." That is all I ever wanted. That is everything I will ever need. I did not walk out of that courtroom a rich man. I did not get a key to the city or my face on a billboard. But I walked out holding my daughter's hand, and that was everything. You see, the world did not change overnight. Bills still come. The fridge still leaks. And sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, expecting another battle. But now, I wake up with peace, because Amira is home, because I proved that a father is love even if it limps, even if it wears oil-stained jeans, can be the most powerful force in the world. Never let anyone tell you you are not enough because of what you do not have, because what matters is not your bank account, your education, or how pretty your life looks on paper. What matters is how you love, how you show up, how you fight when no one's watching. This story is not just mine. It belongs to every parent doing the impossible in silence, every child who sees a hero where the world sees a nobody, and every soul who chooses truth. Even when the system says you do not matter, love is courage. And courage is enough if this story touched your heart. Do not keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and justice. Comment below, share your thoughts. Your story. Your truth. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded they are not alone. For every father who fights alone, this one is for you.